live with the best father and son team on the internet. It's time for Homie and the Dude.
What is up, everyone? This is Homie and the Dude. We are the Father and Son TTRPG podcast, and we are delighted to be joined today with Jonny and Jason Roy, the founders of Bouncyrock Entertainment and the main developers of Talespire. What's up, fellas? Good to have you here.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to be here.
It is an absolute pleasure, guys, and you guys have created something that, as someone who loves TTRPGs and has been trying to find a solution for VTTs and things like that for a while, is just blown away by what you guys have created and the potential that is here with Talespire and what's coming out of Bouncyrock. But I'd love to actually ask you guys, obviously this didn't just appear out of nowhere. This probably came from a long developmental process of you guys, coming up with the idea and then working down the road. I would really love what inspired you guys to push forward and create some sort of like virtual tabletop, three-dimensional virtual tabletop space that allows for, all these different TTRPGs to be played in using your guys' technology. What led you to here?
I'm not sure. Do you want to start, Jason?
Sure. I'll start by saying we did not set out to make this at all. So this came about. Really, the first iteration was something that was supposed to be a mobile game, kind of akin to if you look at some of the old, not really, but Castle Ravenloft board game, with the modular dungeon tiles and things like that. It was, I set out to kind of create something like that you could play in like the lunch line if you wanted to, something with tiles, miniatures, and dice. And it kind of evolved from there into a more something that's we went from that to like even more video gamey. I remember Jonny put together like a PowerPoint presentation to show just what he was thinking about, and as that's kind of evolved even more with multiplayer and things like that, it took on a life of its own. And that's kind of the short answer, because it's been a long time in the making. Jonny, what do you think, man?
As in, because I think it's like the first stuff we posted about Talespire was back in 2016. At which point it was just a side project to the stuff that we were doing. We've been making prototypes and playing together for a very long time. Over several decades, and we wanted to like make something, because we've been under this like mindset that we wanted to create something that was small enough for us to actually finish. So we were doing a lot of these projects that we didn't necessarily care that much about, but we felt like, they have the right scope for the things we want to do and things like that. So we decided that let's just go for something that we can be passionate about, and like did not really care about the size of it or how long it's going to take or whatnot. We'll just have something that we enjoy working on. And Jason came up with this idea of having, through this thing that he was talking about, having a miniature aesthetic. So basically thinking like, how people are playing Dungeons & Dragons at the table, but only as an aesthetic initially. So we would have, things, the dungeon tiles and things like that would look quite physical, and miniatures that would look pretty physical. And me coming from very much like a technical arts background, thought that was a excellent idea, not just because of the visual aspect of it, which was really cool in itself, but it also would allow us to create a lot of content if we cut out things like rigging and animation, which is like a huge part of making characters and creatures in video games. So that part appealed to me, and it's like, okay, we can do this and create a ton of content really fast. So what we ended up doing was this prototype, and the prototype was based around, so we had multiplayer in really early on, and this is when I say prototype, it's a thing that's held together with like just string and a little bit of tape, not even duct tape, just like that see-through stuff that's not particularly hardy, right? So it works exactly for what we're trying to do. We were just trying to play a thing. So we recorded ourselves running just through a dungeon that we placed out, with this dynamic of one person sort of playing as like a game master type of situation where you can spawn in monsters and things like that. So on my end, I had like spawn points for different creatures, and then I would also play one of the characters, but we would then more like a board game, like the ones that Jason mentioned,
Hero
and some
Quest.
others as well. Yeah, maybe more like Hero Quest.
Yeah,
where
at
you
that
would
time.
go through and then you would reveal a thing, and then the creature would pop up, and we would have some dice to roll and a simple sort of combat system that wasn't even automated. We just had like physical dice that we would roll around. And we had a bunch, I think it was like the 12s maybe, because they felt really satisfying in like a,
Yes.
you picked up a bunch of them. And the system was closer to something like Descent, where you have like shields and swords and things on the die, and you would roll and you were trying to get over the defense of the creatures. And we ran through that, and we were like sort of telling a story as we were going through this prototype work that we made, and it was a lot of fun. So we decided then that we want to like push this further and see like how, like where we can take this. And we played a ton of Neverwinter Nights back in the day, and Nevernights 2. That's how we started Bouncyrock. Technically, Bouncyrock started out as a modding team back in the day, and we made some modules, and we had a lot of fun in that space. So that was another thing I wanted to bring in, being able to like build your own levels and sort of have maybe even bringing in like the multiplayer aspect, because we had that in the demo as well. So we started posted on Twitter with like these GIFs from just characters moving around, dice rolling around, and all that stuff, and people got incredibly excited about probably other things that we were creating, because they saw the thing that we were posting GIFs of, and their imagination went everywhere what this could be. And one of the things that ended up resonating with us was the idea of this being a virtual tabletop. And like, oh yeah, it would be so good to have this be a virtual tabletop, and be able to like play D&D and stuff in this type of, like with these types of visuals. So with that, the thing shifted a little bit in our mind. It's like, oh yeah, it would be really cool to have something like this. So more focus was put on the ability to build dungeons, the ability to sort of just have nice ways of rolling dice and making a very like gamified experience. So we wanted people to feel like they could go in there and still, it felt a little bit more like a video game maybe than just being around the table, and let's focus on the immersion into this table space. So that's how it came about. In my mind, I think.
Yeah.
There's obviously a lot of things happen between there and now, and we can absolutely get in on that as well. But I feel like I've spoken a lot at this point, so I'm just gonna take a small break and speak.
Recover a little bit.
No. Dude, thank you for all that information. That was awesome. Go for it.
To your point about, this concept of, we did not expect or understand how the hell we got here. There's a journey of, problem solving and passion, and this kind of winding road that eventually gets us to lining up what we could have as a business model, but also something we love working on, and also perhaps looking at the market and seeing an opportunity. All of those things are factoring in. And it sounds like you guys were very much on that journey. I think from my perspective, in this space, one of the things when I look at VTTs, there's this balance of super cool stuff, but also maintaining or preserving the essence of the game. And so this balance of like, and it also depends on people's preferences. Some people are really into role playing, some people are really into mechanics and all this other stuff. But certainly that is the bit that if I'm looking at this product from the outside, I'm considering, okay, how well do you accommodate for me as a role-playing lover, or me as a mini-maxer, or those types of things. Can you kind of talk about what your journey, your kind of meetings, behind the scenes contemplations have been regarding that, that spectrum, that balance question?
Yeah. I said, is there something you'd like to chime in on first, Jason?
No, I'll let you go.
So I think our focus with Talespire was always around helping fill in the play space in a way for like people. Let's see. I need to think about this a little bit.
Yeah. Well, like the most important thing that we've set out to do was to make you feel like you're actually at the table with your friends. And the physicality and tactileness of what we have, like the assets, really do kind of lend to that feeling. And we've been primarily focused in the initial development of Talespire on that aspect of development to like the feel of the game. And we really haven't been focused yet on systems or automation, any of those kinds of things. It has really been about navigating the 3D space that you have in Talespire, and making that feel that when you're in it, and like I'm talking like a half hour into a game, it's like if you looked up, you could see your friends around you, because of the way that the miniatures move around and how things feel. It's really interesting. It's really cool. I like that personally about Talespire. That's my like favorite bit. And I noticed that when we play our games, it really does kind of feel like I'm kind of back at the table, because I do have a physical group and then a virtual group, and the virtual group is really just Bouncyrock, and so we play this game together, not nearly as much as we should, honestly. We don't play Talespire enough.
No, and I think just to add a little bit about that, is like it's amazing how much expression you can get out of the creatures and the things inside of the game, and that was part of that feel. And to me, it really dives into the like Talespire itself when I'm playing, and it's a very different experience to me than playing at the table, even if it's sort of the fact that everyone can express themselves in like a nice way through their characters. I think it's really, really nice. And now I've somewhat forgotten what the original question was.
No, that's all right. It was just about, I think you answered it, Jason. Certainly I got it. It was about balancing role play and just kind of people's preferences on how they want to approach a VTT. But I certainly got, what we've watched and seen, and we haven't played Talespire, but we've certainly had a bit of research behind it and seen some of the dynamics of the immersiveness of the 3D landscapes, and they're cool. They're super cool. I mean, the panning shots and some of the other bits and pieces that we've looked at are very cinematic, and they do pull you in. So there's an aspect of that takes care of the role-playing thing. Like, part of role-playing to me is like preparation, like getting, like understanding your environment, relying on your DM to create an environment at times, right? And it feels like you guys have gone a long way in supporting that for the DM, but also for the players.
It feels like in an interesting way, like it's a different skill base for a GM or DM to have. Like, a GM who's going to play, paper and pen style is likely going to need to be able to describe in vast amounts of detail the area that they're in and what's in the room, and if there's clues, and seed things and do all that kind of stuff. It feels like what Talespire brings actually to the table, which is really interesting, is a modular like customizability that in some ways, GMs who don't have artists working for them or people creating battle maps or things like that don't have the availability to do so. But with this, the skill that you end up picking up is, instead of maybe, perfecting your descriptive skills, you can then build these beautiful environments, these, amazing maps and dungeons and things that you guys allow to be created through the, many different pieces, slabs, collections, all those different parts that you guys have out there. And it becomes a skill then of, like, as a GM, how good can I build the map in this world? So then when we're all sat at the computer playing, I can maybe go a little bit easier on my description, and I can let them, oh, you managed to get through the door. You guys are through into the next room. Cool. This is what you guys can see. I know you guys have like different things that allow, for example, like dark vision and all the other bits and bobs that exist within stuff. But I think it just creates a different skill set, which I think is really interesting for sure.
I think you're right. I think it takes away some of the fundamental description required in setting a scene, but it also allows you as a DM, if you're a DM that really likes to be very descriptive or very storytelly, you can do that in a different way that supports the Talespire.
Allow you to get into characters a little bit more. You're not worrying about the environment and the space and, like, things like that as much. I think, it allows you to get into character a little bit more and role play to greater depth. You guys have been using this for, I assume for a while for your games and things like that. Is there anything, like, any kind of aspect of it at the moment that is, like, your favorite bit? Is it, the fact that you can use AoE spells and, create this beautiful kind of, like, cone effect that you can actually see in 3D, which, as players and GMs, is super, super awesome. What if at the moment is something that you guys are loving about what this is bringing to your guys' table when you do play in your groups that you guys just mentioned together?
Okay, so the like 3-dimensional space in general is tricky in tabletop role-playing games. And that is a thing that we've seen both in our games, and I've heard a lot of people talk about. Like, we haven't fully solved 3D space. It's an incredibly difficult thing to do right. I think we've managed to get pretty far in that. But having a true 3-dimensional space when playing within, like, vertical things, being a tower, being just like traveling underneath the city in the sewers and things like that, and actually get a sense for where you are, is incredibly valuable. And that is absolutely one of my favorite parts about playing in Talespire, the verticalness, the actual visualization of the 3D space. And that lends itself well with the rulers that we have as well, because you can, they're sort of built around this idea that everything is in 3D. I think my absolute favorite thing, though, it might just be like both rolling dice and wiggling the character around. So I think that would be my ultimate answer to it.
That is a player answer. I have heard one.
Yeah. The fundamentals, man. Basically, kind of like what we set out to do originally, and that is 3D. The dice physics and the mini physics are absolutely I mean, you can't go wrong with those. So those would probably be mine as well. From a play aspect, for sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. And, it's one of those things, I think, that sometimes for me gets lost with things like D&D Beyond and other VTTs, like especially the dice rolling element. I know from watching your guys' content, it looks like your dice have virtual weight, which is something that I really appreciate. I feel like other VTTs, dice almost, you get that kind of like weird animation like effect where things almost look like they don't have correct weight or like bouncing and things like that. It just looks a little bit odd. But from what I've seen from your guys' stuff, it looks really, really clean. Your dice rolling animations and effects are awesome. I want to ask, because I tried looking about to try and find it. I'm not sure if I was just looking in the wrong places, but what is the engine that you've built this on? Is this like Unity, Unreal? Like what engine have you guys built this on? Is this one that you've created? I'm super, super curious about that.
I guess the fact that it's not super obvious is a bit of a compliment, but it is. It's totally built on Unity. So we're like, personally, I've developed in Unity for a very long time, and I've been on projects that do Unreal, but the main reason why we're on Unity is just because of my extensive knowledge of the API of having used Unity for a very long time. We're incredibly fortunate to have the tools that we have today to be able to create video games, and we've landed on Unity as ours.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's a good choice. It's a really, really good choice. And what you guys have created looks absolutely stunning. I think, you mentioned you're from a technical art perspective, Jonny. I love the fact that, when we look at Talespire, the lighting in it is just so cinematic, so dramatic. It adds a lot to like a lot of the dungeons that you guys have put in. The textures and things that you're adding to, the grounds and the walls and things. It's just really, really beautiful. And I think, you can clearly see you can see the extensive knowledge, and you can also see that technical art idea as well coming into it, and the degrees at which you guys have done that. It's not like we're looking at RuneScape. Do you know what I mean? It's not exactly like flat polygons. Do you know what I mean? All over the place. You've done a really great job, with the tools that you have, and obviously the experience that you have to turn this into something that looks spectacular when it's being played and used.
I had a question. We're certainly not in the same space as you, but as far as models are, we're considering something that it looks like you have dipped into a little bit. So we're in the process of doing a Kickstarter, and part of that Kickstarter is having a shipbuilder application. And when we cast our eye down the road, we are considering some sort of either marketplace or place for creatives to come and build content for our platform. And it looks like you guys have already kind of dipped your toe into that area of the Tales Bazaar, and had a place for people to to create their slabs and their collections and their boards. And so talk a little bit about what the original idea was, and then casting your eye forward, what that will look like down the road as well, once you get that critical mass of people not just playing but creating and having that synergy of access to a marketplace.
So as far as the modding aspect of Talespire, which we always kept that in mind when creating even the earlier versions of it. And that's the reason why we have organized assets very separate from the main game itself. We have what we've been calling Tailweaver, which is this Unity project, which we use internally to import basically all of the assets into the game. And this is what we were planning on releasing to the public for modding. Now, it's been a long time coming, and it's still not ready for people to use this. And the main reason for that is there are things that we need to nail down. There's things that we're not 100% sure whether or not is the right approach data-wise in Talespire. And we're getting pretty close to the point now where we feel like we might have nailed it down, or at least sort of we know what the path there is, so that we can start releasing the tools needed for people to import their own creatures and make their own tile sets and stuff like that. Now, there were certain milestones in Talespire as far as let's say player created content is concerned. The sharing of slabs was a huge one, and that was all on Chris, aka Baggers, because he made the string system where you could just copy a thing and you could just send the string and you can paste it in and you get like the same configuration of tiles and props on the other end, and that paved the way for things like for Tales Bazaar and Tales Tavern, and that basically made not only creating things but also building things in general in Talespire much more satisfying, because it is really daunting to start a campaign and now having to build out an area, because we haven't quite gotten there as far as building in Talespire. Building in Talespire is incredibly fun, but much like Civilization, suddenly it's tomorrow. So the time passes incredibly fast when you're building. It's incredibly satisfying, but if your end goal is to play tomorrow, then building an entire, like, let's say 3 or 4 scenes is incredibly time consuming. So enabling people to just go online and pick up things that they can just start with, or even they might find the things that are connected to the campaign that they're playing if they're playing an adventure. But just being able to combine a few things and then just go in and modify it is also incredibly satisfying. And it's also like the time saving aspect of that is amazing. So that was a big deal. And now recently, we released, or actually it's in beta at the moment, which is these symbiotes, which are, it's basically a browser running on the side of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a browser in how it works, meaning that people can build plugins using HTML and JavaScript and being able to connect to other services, but also being able to talk to the game, or at least get information out of the game, so that they can query things like what character is currently selected, and like they can put dice in the hand of the player, and they can also like communicate between players through these symbiotes. So that enables people to do things that we're not planning to do in quite a while, like integrating character systems, like implementing systems in general, and also there might be other things that they've requested that is something that we're not necessarily planning to do yet, or it's like way down the road, and they can implement that in a way that doesn't take ages like it does with us a lot of times. We find that whenever we implement things, we need to at least do like a really good first attempt at implementing something. So it takes us a lot longer than someone who can iterate on it a little bit faster. So
that's different. That's different than like, the usual 1.0. We'll just throw it out there and assume that it's going to be buggy as hell for the next 6 months and frustrate the hell out of our community.
Yeah, you gotta respect that, man. When big game developers are out there just throwing a freaking bag of dirt out into the crowd and being like, "Go for it, guys!" It's one of those things that I appreciate that you guys put your effort into that, and that's something you're thinking about as well, because again, it feels like with a lot of these bigger companies, it's an afterthought, as opposed to, they want to get the money first and develop later, where it sounds like you guys are about making this as good as possible, for your people, as you're doing it.
As in, I would say that the game development in general is pretty tough, it's I mean, like personally, I'm not particularly happy with the state of a lot of things that we put out, and people, I understand the frustration when things take a long time, because it does, and part of that obviously is that we do want it to be pretty decent and not break a whole lot and things like that. But also, I do feel like the state of the game it's very much like early access, in the sense that there are definitely things we have out there that I'm not happy with, and that we're going to be revisiting at some point. But it's tough. And
do you know what though? That's part of the process. It's something. So we're not developing a game. We're working on a book and a supplement for D&D, and something we found is throughout that process, you didn't know something was wrong until or you weren't happy with it until you find a solution that's better than it, and then you start going back and being like, well, that sucks, and so
that's what we do.
I feel that that's all part of the journey, man. And I think where you guys are at the moment is spectacular. It's something that and I want to ask you a question, because I'm sure you guys saw, like I did, the video released by WotC. When the 1D&D stuff came out, talking about their VTT, that they're going to be creating this 3-dimensional space and all this stuff that
sounds very similar to what what you're doing.
How do you guys, one, how did you guys react to that news? Also, two, like, how are you guys planning on, obviously you currently probably are massively ahead of them in terms of you've had time to work on this, where they have probably been developing it for a lot shorter time, considering the big D&D boom really happened.
But also D&D probably has an army of fucking developers that are that are
true.
So there's all those considerations.
It's totally true. How are you guys feeling about that on your end?
So it was since we started this, it was inevitable, right?
Yeah.
They already tried their hand at the 3D space, way back in fourth edition, right? Which, yeah. And so seeing this, I mean, yeah, it was just a matter of time, really. And it's not, it's not like, we want to be in direct competition with them. We're not trying to create the non-pareil of VTTs or anything like that. We're just kind of doing our own thing and going to continue doing our own thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of about it. I mean, it's some of the comments, I mean, in their videos, you see a lot of Talespire being mentioned, which is flattering.
Yeah.
Totally.
And no, I feel like similarly. It doesn't really change our trajectory. As far as like, I mean, it would be really cool to see something that's really solid that has access to like all D&D, all of the creatures, all of the and it being good. And it's going to be interesting to see how they handle, like, especially user created content, things like that, and how they handle building. And we are working quite hard on and off to try to figure out a 3-dimensional fog of war. Like fog of war that works well in 3 dimensions. And it would be nice if they just solved that. Because it's an incredibly tricky problem. So it's in that case we could just like look at something and see, okay, this is how we're going to solve this, because we've found ourselves in a lot of situations where we're doing stuff that's not necessarily already out there. We can't really look at, oh, this is something like this game did it this way, or so there's been a lot of new things for us, and it's going to be interesting to see how they solve some of those problems. And I'm talking things like building, for instance, like massive worlds. Now, the massive world aspect of Talespire, it might not be necessary, but when we did the alpha, that's what people did. They built these huge things and these continuous things. So we decided that we had to support that, and that was not trivial. It was not trivial being able to like place that many assets and have it sort of like run decent, and also just how to handle vertical space. That's still something that we're working hard on, and we're not, like, at least I'm not happy with how it's handled at the moment. And there's some ideas of how it should be, or we should rather be handled, which we're going to start experimenting with a little bit later. It would be fun to see other people solving those issues, and they should have, like, they're great people over there. There's like really creative people. There's great engineers, and if they're able to sort of figure those things out, it's going to be interesting to see how other people end up solving it, basically.
Yeah. And as a fan of D&D, I mean, I'd like to try it as well. If there was a solid Curse of Strahd experience, or something like that, that would be really fun to play.
But I think ultimately, we're just going to stick to our course of being like rule agnostic and working on supporting player created content.
That's what I was just going to say.
That's kick-ass.
Your offering to the community is different, right? Because you are rule agnostic. You also mentioned some things that 1D&D or whatever they want to call it has not really addressed, which is world building. We've seen some really cool trailer stuff that has been built already, but like what happens with, and especially homebrew stuff, like what is the mechanism for that? So I think you mentioned some really good things. And then ultimately, D&D is one piece of the puzzle. It is a big piece of the puzzle, but it ain't the whole puzzle, right? And so, you're going to have your own community that loves the things that you do. And if you're passionate about doing what you do, then you'll hold your community, whether it's D&D players or other system players. On that point, like, I'm just picturing, so you mentioned verticality a couple times, Johnny. So from our perspective, our offering, and this is, let's say, as a consumer, sort of question to you that you might see in your in your forums or in your Discord, we are putting together a sky combat, sort of like a vehicle combat system. And aspects of it are in vertical space. So certainly some aspects will be in, on land-based space, but certainly others could be in the sky, could be in the sea, could be in space, those types of things. How would we, perhaps not today, but how would we down the road, once the verticality thing is kind of really figured out, how would we be able to incorporate our system, or would users be able to incorporate our system into Talespire?
Yeah, so as far as the vertical space goes, that is like, it's completely functional at this point. You can build like really vertical things and have them. You could have like space battles that are where they're at like different sort of
elevation.
Well, now I was going to say elevation, and I realize we're dealing with space now, so there's some limitations. We do assume gravity being one axis, so in that sense it's sort of. But as far as like different verticality and stuff like that, that's absolutely possible today. I think the thing that's coming in the future that's going to be most like beneficial for the aspect of vehicle battles in space is what we're calling subboards at the moment, which are the ability to build sections of a map on its own sort of board and being able to move that around physically in like around different things. So you could build a ship and then being able to move that entire ship like separate from the rest of the map. So we don't exactly know when we're going to be able to implement that, but that's something that we're definitely going to do in the future, especially for things like airships and just scouts and vehicles in general.
Super cool. Do you know what? That sounds amazing and right up our street, man. When you guys do that, I'm gonna be hopping over and checking that out for damn sure. That sounds amazing, because we're at this place now where we've had to make a system that works for 2-dimensional virtual tabletops that still allows for 3-dimensional movement rules wise. And it would be amazing to have a space where like you said, you can take a whole vessel and move it about in a 3-dimensional space. I think that would be incredible. And I love, also, by the way, I just have to commend you guys as well, because something that we have talked about at length is this whole we have created a modular shipbuilding system and a website that will allow you to generate ships based on parts and things that you choose. But the one thing that we haven't worked out yet is how to then turn that into either art or a 3-dimensional STL, or whatever you want to call it. Do you know what I mean? In
how do you put all those? If you have a list of an inventory of parts, people can laundry list, select them, put them together. How does that Frankenstein-looking ship like come to life in a 3D module?
And I think so. I just have to say, from the stuff that I've seen that you guys are doing with the ships and I've seen some, like, what would you call them? Not ships. They're like I don't know, like galleons and stuff like that.
Galleons, right?
People have created look incredible based on the parts that you've provided and whatnot. And I'll tell you, on our end, it inspired me and also made me feel like this sense of like, holy shit, it's actually possible. like this idea that is wild and out there is actually possible. So I've got to say that's awesome. I wanted to ask, you guys talk about, you guys are gamers and you guys have, you're game devs, you're working with Unity for years, you guys love art, you love D&D and stuff. What like inspires you guys? Like when you guys are out watching stuff or, playing games, or, what out there at the moment is inspiring you guys and keeping you, in that creative space to keep churning out and making this into, an even more badass version than it was a month ago, and and so on and so forth, as years pass.
Before you answer, just on our end, the thing that recently has blown our minds is the new Spider-Man movie. It's just been like, wow, that's possible, like that. I mean, of course, the resources are completely a different story, but just the
storytelling abilities,
the ability to create something like that is impressive. Yeah, on your end, what's the thing that's sexy for you right now?
Well, right. So I mean, I as it is, art inspires art, right? So and I'm pretty fickle So it can go from day to day. It could be like a dungeon synth tune that I heard, or it could be, you know, like the new 40K Warhammer 40K stuff that's coming out, you know, and just kind of rekindling, you know, that kind of stuff. And then, you know, that would make me be like, okay, guys, we need to make some futuristic, you know, dark assets, you know, like, you know, and yeah, we need to make some more assets and things like that, which, you know, and that kind of stuff. So the really cool thing about Talespire is the fact that it is like a sandbox, and it's not only in its execution, like on the table, you know, in play and stuff like that, but also in development. It's a pretty open sandbox. It's not like we have, you know, it's not like Super Mario Brothers where we have, like, you know, levels 1 through 8, and, like, you know, and we have everything defined, and this is what you're going to do, and these are the assets we need, and everything like that. It's, you know, at a certain point, it's like, well, hey, what do you want to fucking work on, man? You know, yeah. I mean, it can, you know, it could be like a new tune if you wanted to, or it could be some new sound effects, it could be some, like, you know, of course, new features. It could be, and as far as the art assets, it's just like, man, just, you know, pull them out of anywhere, just, you know, whatever, because we need everything, right? You know, we need everything. We're building worlds, and not only in, like, you know, medieval fantasy, but also, you know, modern and then futuristic. So the cool thing is that we can grab inspiration from, you know, almost anything, and throw it in there. So to your point, it's like, you know, if Spider-Man was really inspiring, which it is, of course, it is an inspiring film. We'd just be like, dude, let's put this aside. Let's start working on some superhero stuff. You know what I'm saying? And like, yeah, we could totally do that. And that's what's really cool about, you know, developing this project. And, you know, the inspiration never really ceases to stop because of that. Again, if we were working on a very dedicated timeline, or space and time, where it's just like, oh yeah, we're working on something that's, you know, in the 17th century, and it has to be this, and you know, and so you do go to see the new Spider-Man, you can't put any of that stuff in there, you know what I'm saying? Unless it was in a dream or something. You know, so that's what's really cool about Talespire. And that's, you know, like, yeah, I just personally, I just grab it. Like I said, I'm fickle. I'll grab inspiration from just about anything.
That's awesome. What about you, Jonny?
Well, when it comes to Talespire itself, I think, so I think my majority of the inspiration that comes to me daily is just from going to the Discord and looking at the show and tell channel, because the amount of creative solutions that people like do using the sets inside of Talespire to create like completely unrelated things is just mind-blowing. And a lot of the times it's like, oh, they use these aspects to create this thing that we should probably have in the game. Well, maybe we should make this thing so that they didn't have to do that, right? But it's so, as far as like Talespire stuff specifically, I think that's probably my biggest source of inspiration, is just like seeing what people are doing, what they have currently. As far as like on the wider aspect, like I play a ton of like video games and things like that. I think on the tabletop role-playing game side of things, like Shadow Dark is really exciting to me for some reason, and that's actually what we were talking about, like playing internally. I think doing that, like what seemingly simplicity of the rules and how that can sort of translate into Talespire is really exciting.
Yes.
On the video game side, there's way too many games at the moment that inspire. I've been playing Tears of the Kingdom, which is amazing. I've picked up like Street Fighter 6 and been playing through just the world mode, which is incredibly silly. Or the world tour, I guess. It's like Yakuza but with less drama. It's great. And then we've been Hannah and I, my wife, and also one of the artists in the company, we've been trying Diablo 4, which she's probably more excited about than I am. But it's and that's such a great, because the assets there are superb. And because I was looking at Diablo 4 while playing it, because we were playing it on the PlayStation at the time. This was during the beta phase, and I figured, okay, I have to pick it up on PC just to sort of like look at these assets more. And the great thing about the PC is that you can actually zoom in. You can't do that on the PlayStation. So I zoomed in, and it's like, oh, these are incredibly old techniques. There's nothing fancy going on here. It's just insanely good asset textures, models, and things like that, which was amazing. And just the creature design and stuff like that. And speaking of creature design, I've also just started playing Final Fantasy 16, which and all of the Final Fantasy games are just the creature designs and things like that are they're amazing.
Dude, do you sleep?
On occasion, like once in a while, like every 3 days. I don't know.
I was gonna actually ask because I have a like it. What I kind of the vibe that I'm getting, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but do you have this issue that I seem to have as well, where now that we make video stuff and I work on like writing, plots and things like that, I start dissecting the stuff that I'm trying to enjoy instead of like sitting there and enjoying it a lot of the time. I'm like, oh, this is great. But like, like you said, you're like, wait, let me just zoom in and see that barrel 1 second and see what's going on with that barrel. Like, do you
what's
find
behind the scenes? How did they do that?
Yeah, exactly. Do you find yourself dissecting things now that you're in this position?
So I've been doing video games now for for almost 20 years. So there is a time frame, and I don't know if this happens with everyone, but I think it might happen to some people. There was approximately like 10 years where I scrutinized everything. Everything that I saw is like, oh, okay, this is how they did that. And like, oh, I wonder how they did that. And then it's like, okay, that doesn't look that great. Why doesn't that look great? And then it's sort of like every time that I stopped enjoying things. I stopped enjoying like movies. I stopped enjoying, especially video games, to the point where I couldn't just, and I say 10 years, it's actually more recent than that. I think it was the release of Breath of the Wild that sort of had this shift for me. Where I went into that game and it was the first time in such a long time that I felt like a kid playing a video game, because I knew nothing about the game. I deliberately not learned anything about it prior to going in there. And it's just exploring. And at that point, something clicked, and it's like, I'm just going to enjoy things. And I did mention Diablo 4, which was actually a point where I went in and zoomed in. And I do that. I buy games specifically to look at them now. But when I sit down to enjoy a video game, I stop thinking about like story beats. I stop thinking about what the assets look like and stuff like that. It inspires me, but I separated those things. So I have my time for enjoyment, and then I have a time for analysis, basically. And I highly recommend doing that, because I find that I'm not going to say that this is going to happen to everyone, but I found myself analyzing things to the point where I wasn't enjoying it, and that took away some joy out of my life, basically. So just keep a watchful eye on the analysis part, and maybe set up some time for it. Is my recommendation.
that equilibrium. I got a question just to, kind of behind the scenes, Talespire, because we're a small little outfit, Homie and the Dude. We have a few people on our team, and we're in this phase of it's kind of depending on how this Kickstarter goes, it could be more consolidation, it could be more growth, those types of things. But when we consider that, we look at our team and what things are really, what things are important to us to get to the next level. When we look at, key members of our team and what we need, pieces that we need to bring in, talent that we need to bring in, those types of things. When you look at your team, that I'm assuming is either growing or hopefully will be growing in the future, what things are most important to you when you sit down and you consider, do we want this person?
Badass beard.
A badass beard, first of all. you pull out the ruler and you're like, that's 2.5 centimeters. I don't know if that's going to cut it. No, but like if you had one thing or one or two things that you're like, these are the things that we need. These are the things that are going to be super important for us to get to the next level. What are those that you look at in potential future employees or members of the team?
One of the things I should say about like us expanding the team is that we've only expanded the team when the part that they're serving becomes such a, let's call it a big problem for us. Like when we were truly seeing that we need someone to fill this space. we need someone to actually do this now, because it's getting to the point where it's affecting the other stuff, the aspects of actually developing the game. So that's been most of the parts when we've expanded the game, or the team. The original members of the team were basically because we worked together and things like that. We started out with 5 people basically, and that was the team for a very long time, up until quite recently.
How many are on the team now?
We are 8 people at various sort of percentage of employment, I guess. And so the moment we see something that's, okay, we really need someone to fill this position, and that's when we've sort of gone and looked for people. But to say that we've looked for people has also been a little bit of an overstatement, because we have so many people that's been like an absolute joy to work with in other aspects of it. So whenever we've been needing someone, we've had so many helpful people who we would love to work with, and that would love to work with us, that we've been able to pick from. So we've been incredibly fortunate. And those are just people that we know gel well with us as a team, and that are just really good people. And that's incredibly important. I don't know if you have something to add to that, Jason.
No, I mean, other than, like Jonny said, most of the people that we've, hired have been moderators from our, from our Discord, who were already knowledgeable people that we got along with. And it's been, just kind of a natural fit and transition for them. And it's just, like he said, it's just when the project starts to suffer in certain ways because you're doing these other things, or, this hasn't been addressed. That's when it's usually time to, kind of maybe start looking. And that's, whether it's, not keeping up with support tickets, because, you're just too, you're slammed with assets because you're creating it, because, we have a very small team. And when you have a project like this, people wear a lot of hats, right? And, and when you have large ambitions, and those ambitions don't really match up well with time and resources, things can, that's when you really need to start looking to expand. And it is really just about, it's about the right people. You can always kind of, I forget who, maybe I forget who it was, but somebody we used to work with, I think, said you want the right people, you can always hire the best people. And I think what he meant by that is, if you have a core team and you're looking to expand your core team, you want it to be the right people. But if you're looking for a particular thing to be done that nobody on the, you can always just go out and contract someone, and you can contract the best, and they don't really have to be, super gelled with you or anything like that. It's just, a thing like that. So, core teams always looking for the right people, kind of like if you were to have a tabletop group, what I'm saying, something that lasted a long time. You're not going to have somebody who's just always against the grain and et cetera, et cetera. So
to dive into that a little bit deeper, what for you guys constitutes, specifically for the Talespire team, what constitutes the right person? Is it a level of passion? Is it a level of knowledge? Is it a level of wanting to learn and wanting to progress, and willingness to learn and things? What for you guys is the base criteria for the right person, or at least a couple of those base criteria?
That's a tough one.
It's a hard question. It's a hard question.
It is because I guess we are generally running on instinct when it comes to that. And we don't have a laundry list of, we're not looking at resumes or anything like that. It's almost like we've known these people for long enough to get a good idea about who they are, what they are. And again, it's very fortunate. We're very fortunate to be in that position where we don't have to go and have people submit their resumes and have to go over piles of because that would be very difficult to find the right person. we've been very fortunate to kind of like be around these folks who over time have exhibited, the same kind of values, like you said, passion and, I don't know, just that kind of, those
Like
kind of
gut
values that
instinct.
we have in, yeah. It's,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
it's sort of like passion, and also like it's as I mentioned, it's been we've been like fortunate enough to already know a lot of know those people and sort of gel well with them. We obviously need someone who knows something about the work that they're going to do, because and also be quite flexible in the sense that we still require people to often wear a lot of different hats and sort of like be able to do other things. Like also, if you're excited to learn about things, that's important, and to be able to just play around with stuff. But it's also incredibly important to us that you would like whatever thing that you would be joining the team to do, or like your prime thing is that you just really enjoy doing those things, and that you're going to be happy working on those things and happy sort of working with us is
That's a great list of things.
It really is. Yeah,
that's what we've been kind of coming up with. You're right. You can't come up with a tick box exercise, but it is, a lot of it is feel. But there are some basic things that if they don't have that thing, there's probably a decent chance that it's probably not going to work to some respect. We're coming up to the end of our time here, and I just have one little quick one for you. Dimension 20 used Talespire for a campaign. What is a highlight that each of you had, whether it was talking to someone or working with them or whatever, just a little highlight that you had with working with the Dimension 20 team?
Yeah, so I must admit I pretty much hogged that entire thing in the sense of I was the primary person working on it. So I did have a lot of help from a lot of the team, like the entire team in places where it was needed. But yeah, that was I probably should have shared that a little bit more, because I got to sit in on a lot of the taping and things, and that was incredible. The stuff that I was probably most, and I don't know why I thought this was the case, because it's a recorded show, which means that they could edit the hell out of it, right? But how little it was edited was what blew my mind, as in just how they would sit down and they would just play it out. You would have a team sitting out, like with Talespire, there was a team sitting behind them just playing, like doing everything live as they were setting, like as they were doing things in Talespire, and just sort of like filming. You would have the director being in game at the same time, just taking shots and things like that. The one thing they did add a lot of like later was they would redo a bunch of these shots inside of Talespire to make them more dynamic and things like that. But it was amazing how much of just the real time things that happened in Talespire also made it into the show. So I'm incredibly impressed by the people there. And I think it was like also just having them go into Talespire, because this was happening actually before it went out into early access. So we were still in beta at that point, and they reached out and we were able to talk to them, and we had like people come in and demo Talespire. So we would run demos for people. Yeah. And we did a demo, and it's like, oh, this is so awesome. And we should like do another demo for different people. I think we ended up doing like 5 demos or something like that.
Crazy.
And every time, every single person from every demo was there. It just grew from being like 3 people in the beginning to becoming like 10 people or something. Yeah. So every time they would just like, oh, you got to come and see this thing. And they're just so warm and incredibly excited about things. And having Brendan come on and just sort of be so incredibly sincerely excited was warming. But I can see why so many people want to do things with Dimension 20 and with like that company as a whole, because they're a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah.
That's kick ass, guys. And first of all, let me just say congratulations on that. That whole show was amazing, and your system added a lot to it. And you actually mentioned something that is something we've been talking about on our end, and I was kind of we haven't dived into Talespire ourselves at any point, but I wanted to ask you guys, the capabilities you mentioned, the directors in Talespire getting shots and things like that and doing that kind of stuff. The possibilities within creating entertainment within Talespire, like how much do you guys allow for, is there like a director mode or something where you can free cam and do this kind of stuff and move it around and zoom in on things? Do you have a section for that?
Oh, that's funny you ask.
Well, there's a couple of things. So for just moving around doing it live, we have photo mode. So in photo mode, you can choose different camera modes, and one of them is like free cam, and you can fly around without restrictions of the angle that you do in game mode, and that allows you to go and just zooming on things, pan the camera, and also to modify the atmosphere separate from what's actually happening in the game. Do things like focus and use the depth of field. So that's a way of doing it, and that's been the way of doing it. What Dimension 20 had is a tool that we created internally, which is still running in the game, called the sequencer. And the sequencer is a way for you to basically go in and create clips for character movement, for character interaction, but also set up camera curves that is repeatable. So you have a timeline similar to you would have in a video editor software, and then you can set up these events that happens. So I gave a branch to Dimension 20 so they could use that for their after game shots, basically. And Shobak, the guy who worked on those shots and also was the in-game director, he made like hundreds and hundreds of shots in this, and he seemed to absolutely love it, the sequencer. And he even taught me things about it that I didn't know, and I coded the thing, like how to do like an ease out of a camera. You can just like hack it a little bit, like placing like a pin here and a pin there, and then it like eases into the camera. So he got really into it, and that was fantastic. He was great to work with. The reason why Jason just mentioned that is funny. You should ask about that. Is because I'm currently working on making an experimental version of it, which is a more stable version, but not like full release version. But that's going to be put into the game as an experimental thing, meaning that you can enable it and then you can go into the sequencer mode, at which point you can sort of set up camera curves and camera cuts, and also set up like camera, like creature movements and creature emotes, creature attacks, and all of those things on a timeline, and then you can play it back and sort of record that, which we hope is going to like help people, because there has been people making content like this on YouTube with Talespire, and it's I love seeing them, and I'd love to see a lot more of them. So hopefully giving people these tools to be able to do that is going to allow more people to make entertaining videos using Talespire.
100%. We've been looking at a way to get our long form, actual plays. An episode can go anywhere from these days 30 minutes to freaking 5 hours if you're Critical Role. And some people don't want to sit and watch 5 hours. Do you know what I mean? Some people want to click on a short video. So we've been looking at a way to possibly condense our stuff down into a semi-animated version, and based off of what I'd seen from Dimension 20 and the research we did for this podcast and whatnot, I think Talespire sounds like a place that makes that feasible. And also the fact that you can, I'm not sure how much you guys have realized, programming in those camera curves allow for you could then in post do so much with adding in effects and things like that, because you have that that locked motion. That's wild, dude. I'm not sure whether you guys meant to do that, but that's a huge step, man. Having those locked camera curves is massive.
It's also interesting that, because that's something I didn't realize when we made it, because we made this originally to do the early access release trail, and then we did a bunch of these short videos over time when we did releases. It was a lot of fun, but it was taking a bit of time, so we sort of stopped doing them eventually. which is a shame because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But my point was when Dimension 20 started using it, they immediately saw, oh, well, if we can repeat this camera movement, we can do all sorts of things. And like fading creatures in and stuff like that wasn't there before, and sort of like adding a bunch of visual effects. And I hadn't considered that as being an option, but yeah, that's absolutely a thing we can do. So there are, having said that, there are like certain things that aren't just deterministic inside of the game. Like if you're throwing a magic missile, unfortunately, that's not going to have the same curvature every time. That's something I might have to like add because now it's a random seed, so they probably could feed a seed into it to be able to repeat the same one. But that's something maybe if it becomes like a toggle switch. Yeah. Exactly. So that might be a thing that that can at least consider for the future if people like put in a request for it. The sequencer, cool. The sequencer itself, as I said, it's going to be experimental. That doesn't mean that it's not usable, but it also means that we're not going to support it the way like we do the full game. Hopefully, in the future, we can do a sequencer that's like properly designed and not something that I put together over like 4 days to make a thing. Because it's the fact that Dimension 20 was able to use it so well is a credit to them. And I was so apologetic for them, and they was just going, well, this is awesome. You basically made it really easy for us. But for people to use it in the real world, we have to have it a little bit more stable, and that's the part that I'm working on at the moment. Even though I'm not going to focus too much on performance like we do on the rest of the game, and I'm not going to focus too much on like usability to the point where it's like this is perfect. But that's why we're going to add it as an experimental feature. But it's going to be fun to see what people do.
Dude, that's kick ass. I can't tell you how excited that makes me. That's awesome.
Awesome.
Just amazing that I think, you know, something you mentioned, Jason, was just the sandboxness of the dev side, as well as also, you know, within Talespire itself, in the game itself, you know, your ability to just hop and do different things. And the fact that, you know, you're like, okay, cool, we're working with D20, we need to give them this kind of thing, create this, and then at the end of it, you're like, oh, okay, that actually could be a thing, you know, is awesome. I just love the process that you guys are on. And I just have to say, you know, from our end, as people who are diving into our own stuff, it's not game development in you know, it's not that freaking complex, but you know, I appreciate that, and it's something that inspires me massively, guys. I think what you're doing is super kick-ass, and the fact that, you know, again, with the WotC stuff, you're like, fuck it, we're on our own journey, we're just gonna we're going down the path that we're going down, and that's gonna be what it's gonna be. And I think you know, to me, it's commendable. It's something that I look up to in this industry massively, because so many other people are just, you know, jumping on trying to like trying to meet the trends of the time. And I love the fact that you guys are like, we're gonna deliver this as and when it's ready, and we're gonna work through it, and we're gonna add things, and, you know, grow it in this way that means that it's just beautiful and modular and sandboxy and just wonderful for everyone. Gotta say, guys, I'm super excited about Talespire and the future of what you guys are doing. I'm super hyped. With that being said, I'll hand it over to you guys for a little bit. If you guys want to like plug yourselves on socials, if you guys are about for people to ask you questions, or your Discord server, things like that, where can people find information about Talespire? Where can they ask questions, and where can they get the game itself?
Yeah, so I mean, talespire.com would be the place to start, which is going to take you to things like the Discord channel, and also a link to the game, which is currently available in early access on Steam. You can also get from Talespire into Bouncyrock.com, which also features the development logs, which is primarily Chris, to be fair, but now also a lot of other developers has gone in and sort of like just writing logs of what's going on and the challenges that we're having from like from just basically almost sometimes on a daily basis, sometimes on a weekly basis, but just challenges that we're dealing with. That's also where we post a lot of about the new releases. You can, as I said, you can get to Discord. That's probably where the community is the most active. We also have a Twitter account on the Talespire that's sort of active as well. Other than that, I would really want to just thank the rest of the team as well. That's not here at the moment because we're so
Yeah.
And that also extends to the moderators.
Moderators, thank you.
And the the community as a whole, to be fair. But yes, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Damn, you like, I've got to say, guys, you're doing it right, and it's awesome to hear some people shouting out their team as well. That's some kick-ass stuff there, guys. I appreciate you both coming on so much. As always, we've been Homie and the Dude, the father and son TTRPG and MMA team. For us, please join our Discord server as well. If you enjoyed this podcast, we've got an awesome, inclusive, diverse, safe space there for people to interact about TTRPGs and mixed martial arts, as well as also just shoot the shit, which is what we're all about. And other than that, please go check out our Sky Zephyrs Kickstarter. It is a brand new way to experience battle with vehicles in your D&D worlds, as well as also check out our vehicle builder application that will be live hopefully when we post this. It will be a beautiful, amazing space where you can go in and create and build your very own custom modifiable vehicles that you can then get stat blocks for and all that good stuff. But guys, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to both of you, and look forward to chatting to you in the future, hopefully.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you so much for watching this podcast. We really hope you enjoyed. If you are interested in joining our journey as we continue here at Homie and the Dude, you can join our community on Discord, where we give out loads of behind the scenes content, share early teasers and things like that, as well as also just interact and have just a beautiful space for community members to, spend time and interact with each other, which is lovely. As well as that, we also currently have our newsletter of holding. It's the best way to keep up to date with all the content that we're currently creating, anything new that we will be working on, things like new projects, new streams, all that kind of stuff. Primarily at the moment, you can get updates from our Airship Combat Kickstarter that will be coming out soon, and that is all in our newsletter of holding. Not to mention, you also get a free D&D supplement from it as well, so it's a great one. All of those links will be down in the description, so if you've got the time, check them out. Otherwise, we hope you have a really awesome day. Thank you so much for watching Homie and the Dude, and we'll catch you next time.